this drill instructor had about 5 of us up front doing push-ups. And he leans up against the wall and he goes, keep going because I'm not tired yet. And I was so mad that he said that. And then so he just kept going on. He goes, if any of you privates think you don't want to be here anymore and you want to go home, he goes, just stand up and say I quit. He goes, I'll have you on a bus tomorrow morning home. And I thought in my head, bingo,
so good. Yeah.
That's what I want to do. So I stood up and I said I quit. And then he just looked at me and he went, what did you say? And I don't know how they do it, but in the blink of an eye, I had about 15 sergeants, drill instructors standing around me. They put their hand like this and they cup it and they yell directly into your ear. So the sound just gets in there. And they were all yelling. And out of all these people yelling at me, one in particular said, you're going to jail. And I thought, I don't want to go to jail. So I started panicking in the midst of this, and I'm just standing here.
Eleanor read this for us, but we're going to dare to read it again. Bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry, and he asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know.
So I had road rash real bad, both knees, both shoulders, or this shoulder, both elbows. And then I tore my rotator cuff. And
Is it just like because you're older?
Yes. You can say old.
That
I'm an old man, yeah. Yeah, we don't
advanced.
We don't bounce, we crumble.
Okay, yeah. That's
There,
perfect.
I said it for you.
Yeah, okay. Like, why would they be fine and you're like broken?
Yeah, I'm just laying there. I was looking up, and it happened in basically a split second.
Yeah.
I just felt this boom, and Matthew was flying across, and he's going, "It's my fault." When he was flying across the scooter, and then we rolled. He rolled too. We landed next to each other on the ground, but they got up and they were okay.
Yeah.
And his scooter, after he fell off, continued to go, and it landed on Cypress. So it hit him a second time, and Matthew had to go lift the scooter off of Cypress. It pinned him down. So it was interesting.
Oh, chaos. Was that here in town?
Uh-huh.
Okay, not on your vacation.
Yeah, it happened near our old house, so just a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
And the irony to the whole thing was Cypress never wears a helmet. And the ride lasted 5 minutes before we got in the accident. We were in my driveway, and he just looks at me and he says, I'm going to wear a helmet. And I started laughing. I said, really? I had that look, Jerra. I said, you're really going to wear a helmet? He goes, yes. And when he hit the ground, he face planted. And on the side of the helmet, there's a big scuff where his face would have hit the ground.
So you're saying it was intentional?
It was a Lord.
Cypress put the helmet on. It was like, I'm gonna.
He had intuition or something.
Yeah, it has to be a God thing.
Yeah. So
face.
we were thankful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course they were both hovering over me, like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm gonna be fine. You guys make sure you're okay." So
Man, I would have been crying. Did you cry?
No. Actually,
because you're a grown man.
I just laid there and looked up and thought, okay, my ankle is burning. I can feel pain on my knees and elbows.
Yeah.
Then it happened quick, and there was a lady, there's a video out, and she went past us, and then she immediately turned around and blocked traffic. Okay. And there was a guy behind her just shouting profanities to tell her to get out of the way, and she kept yelling back, "There's an accident in front. I'm making sure these guys are okay. Just turn around." And he was just
Ooh, that would have gotten me up to fight. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, and then it turned out she was a Christian, because she told Cypress and Matthew, she said, "I'm praying for you guys." She goes, "I'm a believer. I'm praying for you guys."
That's so kind.
Then she leaned over to me and she said, "Help's on the way." She goes, "Just stay as calm as you can."
Yeah.
So I just laid there, and of course, and mainly because of my age, I'm like, I'm not going to try to get up.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
I feel burning and crackling. I think I'll stay here a while.
Broken ankle or not, if someone was yelling at me after an accident, I would have gotten up to fight. Like, come here.
Yeah, like, well, the ambulance, there's a bed. I'll just lay down.
Yeah.
Continue to lay down for a while. So yeah, they took me to St. Luke's and X-rayed my legs and stuff. So I broke the tibia. The long bone, the large bone that goes down right at the base. I cracked it.
That's a big one.
Yes. So the base of it cracked and broken. So I can still stand up on it, but the way it looks in the X-ray, my foot could slide forward. Well, actually, backward or forward, because that bone holds your foot in place.
Together.
Yeah. So just waiting for it to heal. So 2 more weeks. in this
Right,
thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, Blade, thank you so much for doing the podcast with us.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
We had to break your foot in order to get you
Yeah.
in the seat.
Yep, break a leg. That'll get me here.
That's true. Yeah, you already have good. Is it good luck to break your leg or
It
why?
is.
Break a leg. Yeah, I took it literal.
Okay.
Just
The question that we like to ask everybody when they first come on our podcast is, what is your favorite color? And
Blue.
what does and what does that say about you as a person?
As far as relating to my personality, there's, I guess, indicators in my life. There are things that happen and that color relates. I love the ocean. That's one of my favorite things. And of course, you know, if you're out to sea, that water is bluer than blue. It's a favorite color for cars. I love aquariums and fish, you know, so when you set up tanks and you put in good lighting on aquariums, the hue or the illumination is blue. And I've learned that over the years, the color blue is constantly in my life, or it's something that stands out to me and reflects. So years back, I thought, well, I must like this color. You know, it's always apparent. So, kind of a strange observation, but that's how I adopted the color. I used to think that I liked red, but that wasn't the case.
You didn't know.
Yes.
That's the fastest anybody has come up with an answer for that, and like that makes so much
Oh,
sense.
okay.
Yeah, usually people are like, I don't. Actually, what's really funny is a lot of people that come on the podcast, they're like, what's my favorite color? And then they're like actually wearing
Yeah,
that
they're
color.
like,
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
Well, you got it on your
Blue on the
chest.
cast, yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, is that in the shot? I don't know. It should
He's
be.
gone. Yeah. Shouldn't-
Yeah. Anyways, our second question we like to ask people is, what is your earliest memory?
It's Ninja Turtles, Joseph, that we have.
Okay, this one is quite bizarre, so
Okay.
I may have to ask forgiveness for this, but I remember, forgive me for this, but I remember breastfeeding.
Oh,
Really?
And I asked my mother one year, I said, Mom, I'm going to ask you a question. I said, it's going to sound strange. I forewarned her. I said, I just want you to know that I'm not trying to be weird or anything.
Not a creep.
I said, but I remember breastfeeding. And she looked at me and she started laughing. I said, okay, so you don't think I'm crazy. I described the bedroom. I described one of the incidences where she took me out of the crib. She laid me in between my mother and father. It was storming really bad. There was a tree outside. The branches were banging up against the window. I remember all that sequence, and her mouth flew wide open. And she said, Blade, we were under a tornado warning that night.
And how old would you have been?
8 to 10 months, approximately.
Really?
And she said, Blade, she goes, that's detailed. And so she was shocked.
That's crazy.
So, and then I have other memories. I remember being in my crib, standing up somewhere around that time, and I would throw my bottle out of the crib. And I'd say, I want a cold drink of water, and I have to pee. And because they were potty training.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and she laughed. She goes, yeah, I used to do that all the time. She said, I'd wait till the bottle hit the floor, and I knew you needed to come out of the crib.
Oh my goodness.
Or I needed a diaper
Wait, this
change.
is scaring me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerra's banking on Gwen not remembering anything.
Yeah.
There's
She
memories
spent
that'll
quite
pop
a
up.
bit of time in our room.
Yeah, it's surprising. And I think, like I said, I'm probably just strange, I guess. But
That's insane.
yeah. And I remember playing outside when I was a year old. One of my brothers put me on a runner sled, and I was 13 months. And my second to oldest brother, he pushed me down the hill, and I slammed into the fence because I had no control.
Yeah.
And I remember that vividly. And then there was another incident where I was trying to go into the bathroom. I was just running around in my diaper, and he slammed the door. I was trying to intrude
Yeah.
into the bathroom, and my hand was in the
Oh,
seam of the
yeah.
door, and he slammed it. And my dad, I told him, I said, how old was I when that happened? He said, you were maybe 14, 15 months old. He said, you were, and I remember being in a diaper.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of,
That's crazy. Why do you think you remember so much from your...
I have no idea. That's
Okay.
something I could never figure out, but I would test those memories by asking my grandmother, my mom and dad. I'm like, am I imagining this, or did this happen? And they confirmed that those things happened.
That is so weird.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you remember a lot of other things from your life, or is it just early childhood?
Actually, yeah, quite a bit. Even when I was really young, I'm packed with memories and stories. I took in a lot, and I could remember a lot of things.
So, do you remember things really well now, or do you forget everything now because
No,
you
I still
remember
do.
so much?
I think the Lord blessed me with being able to remember. And one of the things, if I see someone, I can not see them for 20 years, and I'll see them, and I'll say, "That's so and so," and I do that with Michelle all the time. She's like, "Blade, I know you remember everybody." She laughs. And I'll go up to people that I haven't seen for 40 years, and I'll just call them by their name, and they just turn around. They go, "And you are?" And, excuse me. And I say, "We went to school in 2nd grade," and they're like, "Oh." And a lot of times they'll remember me because of my name. They're like, "Yeah, Blade, I remember you," but they remember my name, and not so much me.
So, do you win every argument because you remember all of the details?
No. I am happily married. That's the disclaimer.
Yeah.
If you want to be happily married, you
can't
forget a
win.
lot.
Yeah.
Conveniently.
Yeah, you choose to forget.
Yeah.
That is funny.
So,
Yeah. So where did you grow up?
that's kind of a long story. Born here in Cedar Rapids. A little bit of controversy with my race when we were kids, because my mother's black, my father's white. Once again, story all the way back to when I was a kid. My father and mother confirmed this. We were born at Mercy Hospital, but most of the doctors wouldn't deliver my brother and I because we were mixed race.
Are you twin? Are you a twin?
No, he's a year and a half older.
Oh, okay.
So there was a doctor named Percy Harris that he's a black doctor. He stepped up and he delivered us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because we were kind of an abomination because of our race. So no one wanted
Wait, so
to
they had a black doctor working at the hospital, but the white doctors wouldn't
The white doctors did not want to deliver
mixed race babies?
mixed race
Would they
babies.
deliver black babies then?
Yes.
Oh.
Or white, but mixed race
Not
was
mixed.
considered an abomination. So we
Yeah.
had some trouble back then. So I was born then, and my backing up even further, my father was a World War II and Korean War veteran, and he was, after the war, he was traveling around with a carnival, and he was in the southern states, and that's where he met my mother in Mississippi. And because she was black, somehow, and I only got bits and pieces of the story, but the Ku Klux Klan got wind of them being interracial in a relationship. So they, when my dad was at the carnival working, there was another guy they called Red. My dad was a redhead, and they mistakenly identified this other guy. And when my dad was at work, he came home, his trailer, they traveled in camping trailers, and, they burned his trailer down, and he had a dog. They strung the dog up in a tree and hung the dog. So my dad grabbed my mother and said, "We're out of here." And
Wow.
came to Cedar Rapids.
Wow.
So that's where, and my mom was pregnant with my brother Trace at the time.
Wow.
So that's how, my father's from Shellsburg, Iowa, but he had left Cedar Rapids, but we returned here because at the time, this was a safe haven for interracial couples.
And honestly, there's so many mixed babies in Cedar Rapids.
Well, and there's some history behind that too, because back in those days, it was safe to be here. Yeah.
Okay.
Or safer, I should
Yeah,
say.
that is kind of crazy though that the doctors at the hospital still didn't want to deliver interracial kids.
Yeah, and I went back. This was a few years back. I did a little bit of research on Dr. Harris, Percy G. Harris, and his history to see. And interestingly enough, he had problems buying a house because my father had to buy a house. It was the neighborhood is called Oak Hill Jackson. There's remnants of that neighborhood. But
Yeah, that's over by the hospital.
Yes, Mercy and
Yeah, I used
Metro
to
School.
live in
Okay.
an apartment over there.
So yeah, when I was
Jackson apartment.
When I was a kid, okay, so you know that. Yeah, that location, that was the only place, if you were interracial or black, that was the only place in the 60s and early 70s that you could own a house.
Really?
And so no one wanted to sell Dr. Harris a house outside of that area. And so he somehow fought to break that boundary. And there's some other people that stepped up with him and some good neighbors that said, we'll let him live next to us. So he ended up buying a house in the Beaver Park neighborhood.
Really?
So even he had his battles going through that at the time. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
and
interesting.
Beaver, that would have been like the nice area.
Yes.
And,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's still kind of nice in some spots, but
Yeah, they call it old money. That
Uh-huh.
they call it the area north of 19th Street, or I'm sorry, east of 19th
Yeah.
Street. Yeah. So 19th Street up. So
it's crazy to think that people were having those struggles back then. Like, and it's so different now.
Yeah, it is. And so my brother and I, when we grew up, my mother and father actually ended up splitting up. My dad had cancer, or was diagnosed with cancer in 1969. So I was just turning 3 or somewhere 2, almost 3. And he was in the hospital for a little over a month, and he had throat cancer. He was in World War II. He occupied Japan when they dropped the bombs. So he moved in. His campaign moved in. They occupied Japan for a year, and he was offshore when the fallout was raining down. And he said they were on the boat. They didn't know it was radioactive. They're playing in the snow.
Oh wow!
And it was all fallout.
Yeah.
On the ship. So the doctor said that could have been part of the cancer that he had. So he was in, and he ended up with a tracheotomy. And back then they just butchered you and cut the cancer out. And my mother left him for another man at the time. So when he got out a month later, they kind of fell apart. And so my father took my brother Trace and I, and then we left Cedar Rapids, ended up in Omaha for a short period of time, and then kind of bounced around. Well, I actually bounced around quite a bit. And then a year ago, I finally pieced together all of the places we had lived. But what my father was doing at the time was he didn't want to lose custody of us because he was sick with cancer. They gave him 6 months to live. He ended up living 11 years because he told me before he passed away, he said, I asked the Lord to keep me alive long enough for you boys to be able to take care of yourselves. And he granted my father that because they gave him 6 months. He lived 11 years before he passed.
And so how old were you when he passed?
14.
Okay.
Yeah, my brother Trace was 16. So, and then once he passed away, I moved in with my grandmother, who was 85 at the time, because my mother was struggling with alcohol. And,
Is that so? When did she just not want you guys when she got remarried?
She did want us. In all fairness, she did. I know she always loved us.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt about that. But she just wasn't capable because of the struggles with alcohol. And
so at the time when your parents broke up, she was struggling with alcohol. At the
yes.
time. Oh, okay.
Yes. So she was wanting to be on the party scene.
Yeah.
And my father was much older, so. I'm not ashamed of this. I used to be embarrassed, but my father is 29 years, was because he passed away, both of them. He was 29 years older than my mother.
Oh, wow.
My father was 51 when I was born.
And how old was your mother?
Whatever, 29.
29 years ago, I guess.
So
Yeah.
for all you mathematicians,
Oh my gosh.
subtract 29.
I'm not a
So,
mathematician.
yeah.
Don't do
So,
the numbers.
yeah.
Whoever's watching.
And, and I know that was probably one of the big issues, the age difference. And back then, I know a lot of folks, that had parents and grandparents that they married much younger women at the time. So my father fit into that.
Well, it makes sense because then you take care of this young girl that probably doesn't have anything, and
Yes, provide at home.
yeah,
and all
I
that.
provide
So,
for them, and
yeah, so we ended up, but anyway, to back up, I forgot I didn't answer your question. We ended up we went to Mississippi for a short amount of time, experienced a heavy amount of racism then, and then my dad decided, okay, the South isn't the place. Well, Mississippi. So we moved a little further south and settled in a small town called Naylor, Missouri. So I lived there from 1970 to 1974. So from the time I was 4, almost 5, till I was 8. And at that time, we moved back to Cedar Rapids. And we'd come back, I think we came back 3 or 4 times to visit in Cedar Rapids. And in that time, we were too young to understand, but later I found out my mother and father were making peace with each other. And then one day in 1974, he says, I was in 3rd grade at the time, or just starting 3rd grade. He comes up, he said, you boys, come here, I want to ask you a question. And we're like, yeah, Dad. And he said, do you want to move back to Cedar Rapids? And we just jumped for joy, and we said yes, because we were literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think the town had 800 people,
Oh, wow.
and we went to real small elementary school, so we were excited. So we moved back, and I was in 3rd grade.
so was your dad a believer?
Yes.
Okay.
And I couldn't say my mother was at the time because there were no signs of it. Of course, the lifestyle, we know folks by their fruit.
Yes.
But my dad prayed a lot. And, before we would go to sleep, my dad would kneel down at the bed and pray. And one day I asked him, I said, Dad, I said, what are you doing? And I was maybe 8 or 9. He said, I'm praying for protection over you boys. He said, you know I'm sick. And he said, yes. He said, I always pray that God will take care of me long enough so that I can take care of you. And he said, I always pray for your protection.
Oh, I'm going to cry, but because I'm pregnant. I'm like, this is sad. I don't know. Okay.
It gets worse.
I'm sure. Well, it's just amazing. I feel like it's the heart of a believer to, like, you know, because it would have been easier for him to just abandon his, like, black sons, his mixed race sons, have an easier life. And his wife is like has left them, and now he's taking care of 2 kids, and he's got cancer.
Yes.
And he's like putting you guys first and taking care of you. That's like
he sacrificed his life. That is true, you know, because of course, you know, with all the he was a disabled war vet. He had frostbitten lungs from Korea, so you know they had to release him from the army. He had been in for 15 years, but he fought in both wars, Korea and World War II, and of course, you know, he had that demeanor, you know, he was definitely military, you knew it, and of course he's a decorated war veteran, but he was humble. He would never, I always tried to get him to tell me stories, and he would never tell me anything about the war. He'd tell me something silly, like he told me he was in the Philippines and they would dig holes away from the camp where they're sleeping, and he said he went out to use the restroom, and he said he felt something bite him, and he reached down. He said he grabbed a big snake that had its 2 fangs sunk into his leg, and he said he jerked it, and the fangs ripped his leg open, and he threw the snake as far as he could. He said it was a venomous snake, and they shot him up with anti-venom, and he said, I was sick for a month just from that. He goes, I was more sick from the anti-venom than if the snake so he'd tell me stories like that, but I did get him to tell me one in particular where they had pushed the Koreans all the way up to, I forgot what parallel, but almost into China. He said, and it was freezing, and they were buried in mud in the trenches looking up because they were in the ground, you know, camouflaged in. And he said all these folks were jumping over the trenches. He said, but the most interesting thing, he said they weren't speaking Korean. They were speaking Russian and Chinese.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I knew about the Chinese. He said, but they're Russians.
Wow.
In Chinese
That is
uniforms.
bizarre.
Yeah, so I'd get him to tell me stories like that. So those were the small things that I would get him to admit, but I had to get a little older before he'd tell me stories like that. And a lot of times he would say, you know what, he would always say, wait till you're older. Then I'll tell you. Of course, he passed away when I was 14.
Yeah, when you were older.
Yeah, so I never got
Yes,
that
when you get to heaven, you can demand your stories.
So, yeah, and then he passed away May 28th of 1981. I was 14. And then I moved in with my grandmother, his mother. She was 85. And essentially, my brother and I were taking care of her. She said, I want to take care of you boys, because my mother wanted us to stay. She said, you can stay with me, but I said, Mom, I love you, but I said, my grandma needs me. I said, she's old. And my mom said, I understand. She said, but the door's open if you need it. And so I moved in with my grandmother, and 1 year later, I came home from, there's always a story. There's other things I'm not including because I'd be here all night, but there was a lady, I marched in a drum and bugle corps at the time, and there was a lady in particular that lost her son, her only son. She had like 5 daughters, and she had this obsession with having a son, and she was kind of manipulating my brother and I away to hang out with their family, bribing us with pizzas and stuff. And my grandmother was getting really scared or nervous that she was trying to take us away. And I think it caused my grandmother to have a stroke. So one particular day I walked upstairs to get permission to go to the movies, and I found her on the floor. She had a stroke, and then she died 2 days later. So I was 15 at the time.
Goodness.
So,
wow.
And then, of course, I said it gets worse earlier.
Yeah.
I still didn't surrender to living with my mother, so I started staying with friends, and supposed friends. And a couple of them in particular showed me that they were friends because they wanted my things.
Yeah.
And one in particular took all my clothes, all of them except what I was wearing, and I tried to get them back. Even the parents, they would not give me my clothes back.
Wow.
So
That's insane.
yeah, so then I ended up kind of at a very low point where I was hanging on as much as I could. I was surviving, and I went to my mother's mom, my grandmother, and her hands were full because she was taking care of a few of my aunts and their kids, and there was 15 people living in the house. It's a big house, but she took care of so many people, and they didn't have food a lot of the days. Refrigerator was empty. So other than just having a place to sleep, there was no provision there. So I went there because I was so exhausted from going to one place to another, and no one really wanted me long term. Who wants a 16-year-old?
Yeah.
That's down.
And so where was your brother during this while you're
He moved
couch
in.
hopping?
He took a girlfriend at 17 that was 5 years older than him, and she was loaded with money, so he had a place to live.
So he married well, or he dated well.
He wasn't. He was shacked up. Let's call it what it is. He wasn't. He was living in sin. But she provided. So she had a car. She owned her own 4-bedroom house, and she was 23 or 24.
That's insane.
And,
wow.
So he stayed with her, shacked up, and of course I didn't have any options like that. So I ended up staying with my. I went to my grandmother's one day in particular and was just physically and mentally exhausted. And my mother comes over to visit that day. Just happened to be coming over, and I was sitting on the couch, worn out. And she sits next to me, and she had this look on her face like she's looking at someone that's in trouble. And I just kind of looked at her, and I go, "Hi, Mom," and she says, "Blade." She goes, "You do not look well." She goes, "Something is wrong." She goes, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "Well, right now, I was just going to stay here." And I didn't really want to tell her that I got drugged through the dirt with supposed friends. So she puts her arm on my shoulder. She says, "Why don't you just come home?" And I surrendered at that moment. I said, "Okay, Mom, I will." And so I went, didn't have anything except the clothes on my back. So I went to the house and I said, "Mom, I'm really tired. Can I just go to sleep?" It's like 7 at night.
Okay.
I slept for 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
So what do you think was keeping you from wanting to go with her?
Fear. I was worried because, my younger sister, Nicole, and I have 2 younger brothers. I didn't want to be a burden to them. I really didn't, because I think it was taking my mom, and she is with the guy that she left my father for. I didn't want to be a burden, and I never really told my mom that. This would, if anyone's listening, that would be the first information I've given out. At that point, I was a burden to everybody else, so it's like I really just want to figure out how to survive on my own. So there's you could call it pride, but it was more just guilt, I think. So when she opened the house up, the guy she was living with, I was thinking, I don't want to burden him because I'm not his son. So this isn't going to look good if I'm staying here. But I was so exhausted, I just need to sleep.
Yeah.
So about the 3rd day, she woke me up out of bed. She said, "You got to get up." She goes, "You've only eaten a couple things in the last couple days." She said, "Get up, get cleaned up. I want you to stay awake." So I kind of woke up and I started feeling better. And, then it was the 3rd term of my junior year. So
I was going to ask that if you were going to school at this point in
I
time.
was, but then I quit. About that same week, I just stopped going because I was going to school and I was hungry, I was tired, so it just wasn't lining up. And I was having to get there on my own and, didn't have enough clothes to change and all that. So I thought, well, there's no point.
Yeah.
So I walked out. Yeah. And I was at Washington High School, so I looked out I literally walked to the end of the hall, and they had the emergency doors. I pushed one open, and the alarm didn't go off, and I thought, I could just leave. I wonder what would happen if I do, and I just left.
Wow.
And then I went back the next day, and I thought about midday at school, I could do that again, so I left and never came back.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your school career because growing up with people not accepting mixed kids, and you stopped at high school. How was that? What was the
high school wasn't as
like?
bad. I went to
Years.
when I was in elementary. I went to Johnson Elementary here in Cedar Rapids, so it wasn't bad because there were multiracial families there, and there was a lot of blacks and white kids, so it wasn't too bad. That was actually a good experience. Elementary. Where I ran into trouble with racism was older adults outside of school. Like I would go to a pet store or a toy store, and my brother and I would get followed. They would see, we had afros, we had hair, and they'd spot us a mile away, and there was always an adult that worked in the store that would follow us around. And some of them were blatant. They'd say, we're making sure you don't steal. We were kids,
Yeah.
What do we do? 8, 9 years old. So we didn't know what words to defend ourselves. So we just kept shopping, but they would follow us the whole time. So we had that a lot.
So how do you feel like as a kid, how did you feel about that you were being treated that way? Did you see it as abnormal, or did you?
We knew it was because my father had to defend us on many occasions. And one in particular, I'll go back, but I'll give you bits and pieces of other things that happened. My brother got enrolled in Mississippi at a school, and they had the teacher had the black kids sitting on the right side and the white kids on the left side. And the day he got enrolled, she separated them even more, and she put my brother right in the middle.
Oh my goodness.
And he's very book smart, so she'd give assignments, he'd finish it, but he'd be the first one to get finished, and he'd put his pencil down. And she walked up to him one day, and we just discussed this a year ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. And she asked him, she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm finished." She said, "You're not finished. Finish the work." He said, "I am done." Showed her the paper, and then she gave out another assignment like a day later. There's a little bit of time, and he did it again. And he said, then all of a sudden, she walked to the back of class, and he was still facing forward. He felt something blunt hit him in the back of the head. She knocked him out.
Oh my goodness.
With a book. He figured out later that she hit him in the back of the head with a book. And he said, my grandmother, my mom's mom, showed up at the school. The lights were out. All the kids were gone. The day had ended. And she peeled him up off the desk and said, "Come on, we got to go." And the next day, my father left with us.
Yeah.
We left Mississippi.
And nobody beat up that teacher.
So I don't know. So
That is really insane.
Yeah.
It is.
So yeah, we went through some things like that and other instances of racism. In Cedar Rapids, it wasn't bad, except there were grown-ups that would call us the N-word. And my father put us in boxing when we were 8 years old. And he said, "I'm going to teach you boys to fight because you need to.
Yeah.
And not that I want you to." And he was a professional boxer during World War II in the Army.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he sparred with some of the heavyweights that are well known, like Jack Dempsey and Joe Louis.
Really?
So boxers back in the day.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, and
Your dad lived multiple lives.
he did, yes. But he had a lot of wisdom. One nice thing about an older father is the wisdom we gained from him was just unbelievable. And the most important seed he planted in us was accept Christ. He said that's the most important thing you're going to do in your life. Of course, I didn't listen for years. It took a long time for that seed to grow, but it did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as a kid, what was your understanding of who God was?
That's interesting. When I was a kid, God was someone who protected us and kept harm from us. And, like I said, things would happen. And back when I grew up, a lot of grown-ups would show hostilities toward young kids. We would walk through neighborhoods, and we weren't concerned so much about other kids as you had to watch out for the grown-ups. Because, a 25-year-old drunk guy would come up and try to kick you or hit you when we were 10 years old. And so it was a different world than it is nowadays. And so I think we required, and of course our race, we required more protection. And my father always prayed for protection. When we lived in Missouri, we lived in this literal shack that was up on bricks. And a gust of wind that would blow hard enough would knock that house down. And so when a tornado warning would come, we would be sitting in the car, which is no safer. And there were no ditches. Everything was flat. There were no ditches, nowhere to hide, no basements. So my dad, he would start praying and out loud. And he would tell us, he said, "I'm praying for the Lord." And one in particular, there's a funnel that just went right past us. He said, "I prayed for protection. You see that funnel?" And we're like, "Yes." He said, "I prayed that God would let that thing pass us," and it did. So protection that's how I saw God as a child. Yes. I didn't surrender to the Lord. I just knew who he was. I believed in God, but I had no commitment to God till later in life. But I did know that if I was in trouble, I could ask God to protect me. And so I would still ask God for those things.
So were you worried at all, like your experiences as a kid when you had kids that are mixed race later on?
That was a
like,
concern.
"Oh, it's fine now"?
Yeah, and I saw the times change because when the 80s hit, that's so to kind of fill in the gap, I moved in with my mother. I was 16, and I had just turned 17. I didn't want to be a burden to her, of course, so she wanted me to go back to school. So I went and re-enrolled at Washington. Our counselor was a racist, and we knew it. And everyone that was black openly knew that he was openly racist against black kids, because you just know those things. And he was always mean to us, and he was irate that I wanted to return to school. And he made a comment with my mother sitting there. He said, "If you do this again, I'm going to tell you where to go." He goes, "I'm going to let you know you can jump off a bridge if I quit and re-enroll again." I was angry at him then. So I went to school for about a week, and I did the same thing. The temptation hit me. That door was calling my name. I did it again. And I just walked out. And so I went straight home, and I said, "Mom, this isn't going to work." And she goes, she goes, "Blade, you have to go to school." I said, "Not at Washington." I said, "I'm not going to set foot in that school again." Because the kids, I noticed one thing, the atmosphere, all the kids that moved on, no one cared that I was gone. There were kids that I was friends with, they didn't even know I was out the entire term. They literally didn't know. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be a part of this organization. So my mom said, "Blade, you have to go to school." And so one of my friends, his name's David, was enrolled at Metro, which is a secondary school. And he calls me and says, "Blade, I'm at Metro." He said, Metro had a reputation for like all the bottom dwellers and people that smoked and drank, that and had a hard time. So I had a little bit of pride and didn't want to enroll there at first. But he begged me. He said, "Just come down and give it a try." So I went down because my mother said I have to be in school. I enrolled, and within the first week, I instantly connected with the staff. Their school was designed for people that were going through things like I was. Didn't have to be drug related. My problem was just disconnected from the world, and I didn't fit in anywhere. So I started, the rebuilding process started. I wished I knew what I knew now about the Lord, because I would have quickly included Christ, and a lot of those things wouldn't have happened if I would have known just how much God loved me then. I wouldn't have had to suffer the way I did. But lack of knowledge is what kept me on a path of struggle. And because my father was gone, there was no one to lean on. And of course my mother didn't know Christ, and my grandmother, who did, my dad's mother, had passed. So there was no spiritual guidance other than bear it and move forward. So that's kind of what I did. So I went to Metro School for 6 months, and I got on my feet. I started feeling better. I always tell people I took this big breath and realized I'm going to be okay. So the next thing I wanted to do was go into the military, because my father was a World War II, and my grandfather, his dad, was a World War I veteran.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, I'm going into the military. So I went to the recruiter 8 months in, and walked through the front door, and I told my brother Trace about it, and I said, "Let's go join the Marines." He's like, "Let's do it." So we went in. Of course, he was a high school grad, so they signed him up, and they pointed to me and said, "You can't join." And I said, "Why is that?" They said, "We don't take non-graduates in the Marine Corps." And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I did the next best thing. I joined the National Guard. So I signed up, took the test, passed it. And then my brother went to California, and I, because I was signed up with the National Guard, but I hadn't gone to boot camp, I could still fly for free on a military flight.
Oh, wow.
So they put together this hodgepodge makeshift uniform. It was horrible. It wasn't clean. I didn't know anything about ironing it and putting on the buttons and all that, and how to wear the hat. I didn't shave, which you have to. So I went to Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska to get on a plane. And when I get up to the counter, all these Air Force people are looking at me like, "You don't even know how to wear your uniform." I'm like, "I don't know, and I don't care." So this one higher ranking guy told me, I said, "I've never been to boot camp." And he went, "You've never been?" He goes, "Well, how are you in the uniform?" I said, "They told me I could just wear the uniform just to fly on the plane, because you had to be in uniform." So I kind of finagled my way onto this plane, went to California, and watched my brother Trace graduate from Marine boot camp. So I thought, my heart was there. I wanted to be a Marine, but I couldn't because they wouldn't let me in. So he graduated from Marine boot camp. I flew back with him. We went to the recruiting office to say hi, and my brother wanted to thank him for signing him up. And there was a gunnery sergeant, basically, for those that don't know, so high-ranking sergeant. He says, "How come you're not a Marine?" I said, "Because you guys won't let me in." I said, because I didn't graduate. He goes, hold on a second. And he gets on and he's typing something or on some computer, old dinosaur thing. He goes, could you score 80% on a test? I said, I could try. He goes, if you could score, he basically equated to, I forgot, they had a score like 52 or something. There's some number, but it equated to 80% right. He goes, for 1 month, he said the Marine Corps is letting non-graduates in.
Oh, wow.
I said, sign me up. So I went, took the test, passed it, probably by the skin of my teeth, but I passed the test. And it was just a 1 month thing. So I ended up getting in.
I wonder if they did that for you.
I kind of thank
just
God
like
for
God,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like God opened this door for just a few seconds
Yeah,
for
a
me to
little
get
bit.
it. Yeah, and that's all I needed was just someone to open the door. So I got to join the Marines. And then, so I came back, I told my mom what I did. I said, Mom, I just took a test. Been gone for a couple days. Because, you know, her first thing is, where were you? I said, I want to join the Marines. And, you know, she kind of put her head down. She was sad. I said, Mom, I said, I know that we haven't had the best as far as relationships. I said, I'm begging you, if there's anything you could do to make up for anything that's ever gone wrong, I would ask that you would sign the parental document so that I can join the Marines, because I was under 18 years old, and she did.
Wow.
So at 17 years old, I went into Marine boot camp.
Wow. So where was that boot camp at?
San Diego, California. Yeah. So everyone west of the Mississippi they send to San Diego. Everyone east of the Mississippi goes to Parris Island, South Carolina. So. And
So it was the same one that your brother graduated
yes,
from.
exact same one. And I understood that it was tough, but I was mad at my brother when I got there because he told me, but I was still thinking, why didn't you tell me? This is so horrible. It was like waking up in a literal nightmare. The way they treat you.
Yeah.
Because they deprive you of sleep. You're depressed. I was homesick because I was 17.
Yeah.
And it was just a nightmare world. You know, you wake up. The first few days, you're only getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So about the fourth day, you're breaking down.
Yeah.
'Cause
You're probably losing your mind.
Losing your mind, you're exhausted, you're borderline hallucinating because
Yeah.
you're so tired, your brain is trying to dream while you're getting yelled at by 3 or 4 sergeants in your ear. You know, so I was having those doubts, like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
And there's something I don't tell too many people. I stood up and decided I was going to quit
Oh, wow.
in the middle of boot camp. I came down with the flu, and this drill instructor had about 5 of us up front doing push-ups. And he leans up against the wall, and he goes, keep going, because I'm not tired yet. And I was so mad that he said that. And then, so he just kept going on. He goes, if any of you privates think you don't want to be here anymore and you want to go home, he goes, just stand up and say, I quit. He goes, I'll have you on a bus tomorrow morning home. And I thought in my head,
Oh, that sounds
bingo,
so good. Yeah.
that's what I want to do. So I stood up and I said, I quit. And then he just looked at me and he went, what did you say? And I don't know how they do it, but in the blink of an eye, I had about 15 sergeants, drill instructors standing around me. They put their hand like this and they cup it and they yell directly into your ear. So the sound just gets in there. And they were all yelling, and out of all these people yelling at me, one in particular said, you're going to jail. And I thought, I don't want to go to jail. So I started panicking in the midst of this, and I'm just standing here at attention, just getting bombarded. And then my actual drill instructor for our platoon, he said, you better start doing push-ups now, or we're getting the MPs and we're hauling you off. So I started doing all these push-ups. So for about a half hour, he had me doing push-ups.
Oh my goodness.
Then he said, we're going to call you CCP private the rest of the day. It means corrective custody platoon. So basically a jail. They kept going, where's my jail private? Everybody had to say, you know, sir, jail private. You know, you have to sound off. So I got ridiculed for a couple days about that, but I stayed tough and made it through.
They wouldn't let you quit.
They wouldn't let me quit.
No, they
So-
said you could.
Yeah, I was tricked that day.
Yeah, that's funny.
So unfortunately, I had to stay in. So I took the better path, and I just worked
Didn't
my
want
way.
to go to jail.
Yeah, didn't want to go to jail, so I graduated.
Could you swim? Do you need to know how to swim to be in the
You do,
Marines? Okay.
yes. And there were, I'd say 20% of our platoon could not swim. Yeah, that was interesting because they call it qualification. there's 3 phases in Marine boot camp. Each one, Marine boot camp is 3 months long. So each month is a phase. First phase, they shave your head. You're walking around bald. They make you roll your sleeves down on your uniform. Your pants are hanging over your boots, and you look lost like a deer in the headlights for that entire month. You can't march. No one knows any of the commands. You don't know the rank, and they're just yelling at you. And so that's first phase. Second phase, what they do is they let you roll. They call it blousing your boot. You're allowed to roll your boots up, and they have this rubber band. So you roll your pants up so you can see your boots, and then you roll your sleeves up. So that's the beginning of second phase. Third phase, by then, what they do, they let the hair on top of your head grow out. They never, most of the time, they'll never cut it. And they just give you what's called a high and tight. They'll shave your head on the side. That's one way they identify what phase you're in. The longer your hair is on top, the farther along in boot camp you are. So if you're ever out of uniform or in physical training gear, like your shorts where you're running, they know, other platoons know how far along you are, because the farther in the phase, you start getting little bits of respect as you get further along.
You get to have hair.
You get to have hair, and they don't pick on you the same. You know, they're not yelling at you because they know you're lost. You know, they're giving you actual orders and commands that you can understand by the length of your hair.
Yeah.
So, and then the very last thing they do, the last week, you get to iron the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, the USMC patch, onto your uniform. Once you do that, the last week of boot camp, they treat you like you're an actual Marine, because they say you have to earn that. So once you get that on, that's kind of a reward before graduation.
So what did you appreciate about your time in the Marines?
I'd say 2/3 of the way through, so the beginning of third phase, you start to feel the physical exercise. You start to feel, the best way to put it, you feel somewhat invincible, because you are literally in the best shape you've ever been in your life. That's the one thing that's guaranteed getting through Marine boot camp. They push you to limits that you have no idea that you can accomplish. They make you do things that you think you're going to die, and when you get through them, you know, you stop. I was constantly looking in the mirror, and I watched my face get skinnier. You know, of course, we all got darker from the sun, but they call it lean and mean, and that's a literal term, because all your body fat's gone, every inch of it, and your muscles are developing in a way. And I was a 17-year-old kid, and I'd never been in shape like that. You know, and you could run forever, you could climb things that, you know, and from every aspect of the physical part of it, I'd never been in that good of shape since as well. Because once you get out, then I gained 20 pounds out of boot camp in 1 month, because the exercise wasn't that intense. We probably ran 20 miles a week. I'd say we did 2,000 to 3,000 push-ups, probably 5,000 jumping jacks. I mean, if you put all the exercise, you know, parts of exercise in numbers, it's unbelievable how much exercise they put us through. Punishment is what got us into shape in the Marine Corps. Every time we got in trouble, we were punished. And by punishing us, they had us doing push-ups, sit-ups, and all that.
My goodness. I did think about joining the National Guard at one point to lose weight, but it sounded like way too much work.
It is.
And I was like, well, I don't know if it's worth it.
Seen a lot of guys join the military, or they want it. The physical part's attractive, but you have to take all aspects. You're going to get yelled at. You're going to be belittled. You're going to be called names. They're going to be cussing at you, you know. And so what they do in the military is they break you down till you're almost to your breaking point, and they watch each person closely. When you're ready to crack, they start putting you back together the way they want you to be. And that's what they did. So the first month, they're breaking you down. Yeah,
see, I don't like any of that. So it's just not for me.
So, yeah, it was an experience. And because I was so young, it leaves a permanent impression on you, because I still think differently to this very day.
Well, I was going to say, do you think like your personality has changed some because of that?
It does. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize. It alters your personality. And that's a good way, that's a good question, because I always thought you can't change someone's personality. You definitely can't change their character, and maybe it's a character change and your personality follows behind. But there are things that I guess the best way to describe the changes is they knock a lot of physical fear out of you. You know, we can have spiritual fears. You know, that are we going to heaven or hell? As Christians, we know that is ultimately the most important thing. But as far as physical, your flesh, you'll take on challenges once you're out of the military. You're not afraid of physical things like you were. I was always goofy. I still am. I like to clown. I'm silly. Part of my personality. I thank God for it because that's how He created me. But I learned how to go from silly to serious in 0.01 seconds and stay that way. And, you know, I could stand out in a parking lot for half a day without flinching if I had to. I could still do that to this day. Before that, I would be scratching and itching and, you know. So there are things like that. The discipline never leaves you. So.
Do you feel like, this is going to be a kind of a weird question, but do you feel like part of that experience made you more like articulate and able to communicate with people better?
Yes, because one of the things that they do, one of the biggest focuses they have in the military is how to address your superiors. So, you know, when you're in the Marine Corps, everything is yes, sir, no, sir. And you guys, you see it on TV. You have to refer to, in the Marine Corps, the drill instructors. You can't call them sergeant because that's referring to them in their first person. Everything's in second person. You're not allowed to say, sir, I am having a problem. They'll come up and yell at you and they'll say, point to your eye. And we have to do this. They say, now point to the private. That's us. We're privates. We have no rank. So you have to, when you address a drill instructor, you can't say, sir, I need permission to use the restroom. You have to say, sir, Private Mullinex requests permission to speak to the drill instructor, sir. Then they'll look at you and say, what do you want? Sir, this private needs to use the head, sir, or needs to make a head call. The head is a bathroom. Because we're a Department of the Navy, so we use naval terms for bathrooms. And they'll say, go. And then you just take off and run, and you better be out of there in about 9 seconds.
I would have peed my pants by the end of the interaction.
Yeah. Well, and if you mess it up, and if you say, sir, I need...
Then you got to start over?
They'll tell you, get out of here.
Oh, okay.
And so you have to run and go back to wherever you were. And then if you're desperate, which some people, and I've seen people urinate in their uniforms because they couldn't get it right. So you have to learn. And so if they're a drill instructor, you're not allowed to call them by their rank. You have to call them drill instructor sergeant and their last name. You always have to use drill instructor as the first part of their title. So they teach you titles, ranks, and you have to pronounce everything and address them appropriately. Otherwise you get kicked out of their face and you have to start all over again.
Can we take a break here? I actually do now have to use the bathroom.
Sorry about all that talk.
Drill sergeant.
You guys can, sergeant drill, sir. You guys can continue without me if you want.
Am I gumming up the works here, or is it okay?
No,
Okay.
This is all good
Okay.
stuff. This is the kind of stuff we like talking about.
Okay.
Random stuff. So it's honestly kind of interesting that we're getting...
I didn't know we'd go down this path. Is that how this happens?
Yeah, you just kind of go wherever.
Okay.
And it's not a big deal. Like, honestly, to me, like, it's a little bit more boring when things are just all chronological.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So, I mean, I just think it's kind of fun that we're just jumping around.
Yeah, and I'm notorious for that. Man. I bounce everywhere. So when do you guys post these videos?
I mean, I edit them and then we post them, so it's just however long it takes me to edit them. But usually it's after like a week or something.
Okay, yeah, it'd be interesting.
So I would hope I could. I don't know. It'll probably won't be this Sunday, but the Sunday after, because I'm going on vacation next week, so I'll have plenty of time to.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's folks in church. They're like, I've been watching the podcast,
Yeah.
and I guess you get to know people in ways that you don't otherwise. So there's a lot of benefit.
Yeah.
I take it.
That's just kind of the reason I wanted to do it, was so that people would have an opportunity to just say stuff. Because like you talk, I mean, we're talking about stuff you'd never like talk with someone on a Sunday morning about.
Yeah.
And so just so that people are able to get to know each other better.
Are you guys going through most of the members of church, or do you just have select members that you focus on?
Yeah, we're just asking whoever we want to talk to. So, but yeah, it's just kind of a random selection of people.
That's cool. That's really cool.
But, yeah.
So, yeah, well, I'm glad I made it, because I was panicking that I wouldn't be able to get here because the job was hung up. And
Yeah.
I can't do much, which is one of the reasons it takes much longer for me to get through work.
You good?
I am. There you go.
That's longer than 9 seconds.
Did I say 9 seconds? Is that all you got to go to the bathroom?
That was 11 seconds. Yeah, they don't want you in there doing things that you're not supposed to. And some people go in there and they're trying to hide from reality.
Yeah, or hide or sleep.
Or try to find a way to run away. You know,
Oh.
they'll sneak through the bathroom because there's always a rear exit.
I feel like that is like slavery. If you have to trap people to be there, like they don't want to be there.
Yeah, they say when you get there are things that they said that I absolutely despised, but I now know those things were necessary. One of the things when we first got there, and of course they shaved our heads, we're sitting there taking our hats off and feeling our heads going, oh my gosh, I'm bald. You know, and then they moved us into this room, which it's a church on Sunday, but it's the auditorium the rest of the week, and this major high-ranking guy comes in, and he just kind of very cold stone face says, listen up, recruits. He goes, the reason you're here right now in this classroom is because you are here to kill. He said, let me say it again. The reason you are here and the reason you joined this branch of the service is because your first and primary objective in the military in this branch is to kill. He said, do I make myself clear? And you know, everybody shouts, yes, sir. But then if you're looking out of the corner of your eyes, which, you know, we're humans, we're observing everybody else. I saw one guy to the left of me kind of, he had this look on his face. And we get back to our barrack. Our barracks is our room, you know, basically. They call it a squad bay or barracks, and there were 60 of us at the time. He stood up and started saying, I quit, I want out of here. And then of course, they all surrounded him, yelled at him. He said, this is against my religious beliefs. I didn't join to kill. And then they're yelling at him like, well, what do you think you're doing? They used other colorful metaphors, words, but what do you think you're here for? They kicked him out. He disappeared. We never saw him again. Wow. So there were 69 of us in my platoon, and 3 months later, 49 of us graduated. We lost 20 people for one reason or another. Sometimes it's drugs. They did investigations, found out that people were doing drugs that they lied about. We had 2 suicide attempts, and one guy slit his wrist and he bled through his mattress and it was dripping on the floor. We had fire watch. We had to, I'd say about once a week, we had to do what's called fire watch, and 2 people would be up for an hour, then we'd wake the next 2 people up, and a couple of them caught this guy bleeding through his mattress. So they called the MPs and an ambulance. They just peeled him out. He disappeared. Wow. So, and one guy drank Whisk laundry detergent. And they forewarned us. They said, if you're going to commit suicide, don't drink the detergent.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they said, all it's going to do is give you a stomach ache. We're going to take you to the base hospital. We're going to pump your stomach and we're going to kick you out. And they still did it.
Oh my goodness.
So,
if you're gonna try to commit suicide.
Yeah, so if you ever see a Marine anywhere, just say, hey, question for you. Were you ever tempted to drink the Whisk? And they know exactly what you're talking about. Just liquid laundry detergent.
Yeah.
So after you graduated from boot camp, where did you go?
So I was a weirdo. I joined the Marines. Of course, the valor's there. You want to fight, protect your country, which does come with the title Marine. But I joined the Drum and Bugle Corps because I'm a musician. So, and the regular Marines, when I was graduating boot camp, all of the drill sergeants were mad at me. They were coming up to me and they were heckling me like, you know, you the guy that blows, you know, do you? And one comes up to me and goes, do you suck? I said, no. He goes, then you blow. You know, and they just vulgarities. And, you know, he goes, you suck. He goes, and then my senior drill instructor, we had one guy that was in charge of we had 4 drill instructors. In movies, you always see one. Yeah. One sergeant. That's not the case. We had 4. And there were days all 4 of them were out yelling at us and marching us. And there's days that 2 or 3, but at night, only one stayed with us at night. They called him the duty drill instructor. So one guy would stay overnight with us, but in the morning, we usually had 2 to 3. And our senior drill instructor only showed up about once every 4 to 5 days. And he was the one that got really upset. He pulled me up to the front of the office. The office, they call it the duty hut, which is about the size of this room. And that's where the duty drill instructor's office was. And you had to walk up and you'd bang on the door 3 times. Bam, bam, bam. They had a handprint on the side of the door. And he said, sir, Private Mullinex requests permission to speak to the drill instructor, the duty drill instructor, sir. And then he'd say, enter. So I walked in. And then he turns around and looks at me. He says, Mullinex. He goes, what in the world MOS did you take? MOS means military occupational specialty. He said, what is your MOS? I said, 5577 Drum and Bugle Corps, sir. He said, do we even have a band? What is this? he's like, you joined the Marine Corps to be in the blinkety blank band? I said, no, sir. I joined to be in the Drum and Bugle Corps. He goes, the same thing. He goes, you weirdo. You know, and he started yelling and calling me names. And he goes, that's not the real Marine Corps. He goes, why are you even here? And he says, how old are you? I said, 17. And he just looks at me. He goes, get out of my office. And he just kicks me out. And then he walks out like 2 seconds later. He tells the whole platoon. He goes, we got a weirdo here. He goes, we got a guy joining the band. And you hear people smirking and laughing. So that part I didn't care for so much.
That is very funny to join the Marines.
Yes, but yeah, and I found out that in the platoon next door, there was one guy in their platoon that did the same thing. So, and the definitive difference between band and Drum and Bugle Corps, all of our horns only had 2 valves, and they were all brass. There's no clarinet saxophones, and our horns are designed. They're larger boards, so they put out more sound, and they're called field instruments, so they're made to play outdoors, and they project a lot of sound. So
were you playing shows, or were you doing like funerals, or like
all of the above?
All the above.
We did retirement ceremonies. We did like the graduation, like when recruits graduated. There's a band stationed in San Diego. They played while their recruits graduated, but 1 month out of the year they got leave. You get 1 month a year vacation or leave, and it's law that they grant it to you. But in our units, they give it to you all at once because we all have to be together to travel, so we can't individually leave. So we would take over for a month while the band was gone in San Diego. So we were there playing and performing. So, but we were Drum and Bugle Corps, so we were a little bit louder.
So you joined the Marine Corps to kill it on the stage.
Yes. Play killer instruments. I always told people I'll just stuff gunpowder in my horn and aim it. But the best part was we got to meet Hollywood celebrities. We did a lot of celebrity functions, and one thing I knew going in is the Marines were notorious for being wined and dined if you were in a musical unit. So while all the other guys were in the mud up to their shoulders, we were somewhere in Hollywood meeting celebrities and movie stars and eating shrimp and lobster. Literally, we ate the same food that celebrities ate because they would have like fundraisers and stuff. So they'd hire us to be the entertainment, and then we'd also double up and be guard duty. So when we were there, nothing went wrong because everybody said the Marines are here. So, and we were authorized if something went south, which did happen. We were at the Santa Clara Fair in 1985, and there was a guy that was going around assaulting women or something. So instead of calling the police, they asked us to escort him out. We found him, grabbed him, and 50 of us, we all had our hands on him. We walked him to the front and shoved him out of the front.
Nice.
So I mean, we'd do stuff like that every now and then.
Did you guys carry guns?
We didn't carry them on us because of our unit. Yeah, we carried horns. We didn't carry guns. But as any Marine is a basic rifleman, so the distinguishing difference was my address. That's the easiest way to describe it. Was Marine Corps Drum and Bugle Corps, A Company Headquarters Battalion. Headquarters Battalion is a combat unit in the Marines, strictly a fighting unit that would be deployed immediately. We were attached to them. So what it means, if you see like this unit, it's like we were glued to them. So if war broke out and Headquarters Battalion went, we put our horns down, we picked up rifles, and we were now infantry. So, I mean, thankfully nothing broke out, but Grenada was going on, but they had enough other Marines. They had us on standby, but we didn't have to go. And then when Desert Storm broke out, which I had just got out before then, had I been in, they would have given us the option, do you want to go? So a lot of people don't realize that even though we play instruments, we're Marines first, and then the musicians second. So every year we qualify in rifles, we still rode in tanks, we still did all the military stuff, but our main job was just to perform.
So what kind of music were you playing? I'm assuming like patriotic stuff.
And I hated that part.
Were you playing like big band stuff?
Once again, all of the. So when military people, especially like generals and stuff, would retire, we would be very militant. We play marches, military marches. You know, they call it pass and review, where all the officers walk by and we play all this military music. And we all of us hated it because it was just monotonous. You know, we played Stars and Stripes, Semper Fidelis, all these songs probably 1,000 times in the Marine Corps. So we're just kind of like ho hum, yeah. Then we'd stand at attention for 2 hours while they gave speeches, and it would sometimes be 3, but I mean for hours, just standing at attention, waiting for all these speeches from all these officers, and he was a good guy and he served in this. And then, you know, they'd always say pass and review, so we'd play the Marines hymn last. Once we played that song, we were done, and we'd go back, get out our uniform. But the other 50% of the time, like I said, we'd be in Hollywood, we'd be playing top 40 radio hits, and we play stuff people knew, and so you'd see people dancing while we were playing and having fun. So that part was a blast. And you know,
well, what celebrities did you meet?
I met quite a few. Most of them are probably passed away. Like there's a show called The Love Boat. Like I met Doc. I have pictures of all of them. That guy's name was Bernie Copel. Unsolved Mysteries, that's a show on TV a lot of people know about. Robert Stack. I have pictures where I'm standing next to celebrities and didn't even know they were standing right behind me. So people who were taking these pictures, Sylvester Stallone.
Really?
Yeah, got to run into him twice.
Wow.
So yeah, he was cool. There's a picture of the Marines. I was putting my fingers up behind his head. And his wife was Bridget Nielsen. Seeing like I said, they're all old folks. Got to meet there are 4 presidents: Reagan, Ford, Nixon, Carter. All them. I was on George Bush Jr. I was on the USS Enterprise, the aircraft carrier. We were in San Francisco. They were doing a Say No to Drugs to campaign. So they had a helicopter fly over because there was no such thing as drones. And they filmed us. We all took the shape of Say No to Drugs on the deck of the entire ship. And we were on the very end, so I got to do stuff like that. Once we put the horns away, they said, you guys can go hang out in the aircraft carrier. So I was all over that ship, just looking to see. I went down in all the rooms, down below decks. So we got to do things like that. That was a blast. And those are things you don't necessarily remember to tell people.
Yeah.
But I was nosy. I went down into where they eat, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. Of course, all these Navy people everywhere. Then I was up on the top deck, and a friend of mine, we were acting like we were going to push each other off the ship. And, you know, we were doing stuff like that, but it was fun. Yeah.
So, at what point in this story did you accept Jesus?
Not until much later. I had a few friends that I would attend church services here and there, and that's a whole nother walk from the military.
So I guess how long were you in the military?
So I did 4 years. I joined in May of 1984, got out in 1988 in April. By almost, I considered and was ready to sign on for another 3 to 4 years, but I had a last minute, I made a last minute decision that I don't think I'm going to do this. And it's just I just kind of decided I didn't want to, and it was very last minute, so I just decided to get out, and I thought I'm going to pursue something different. So at the time, I was previously married to my ex-wife, who was from California, and I left 29 Palms, California, and I moved to El Toro or Lake Forest in California. Best way to describe that is I lived 30 minutes south of Disneyland, because that town, there was a Marine base there, and my brother Trace was an air traffic controller stationed there, and that's how I was familiar with that area. So I moved there because I just liked it a lot. And they were, my ex-wife and her family, they were charismatic, and so I didn't know what that really even meant. So I started going to a church called Melody Land, which was right across the street from Disneyland. And the pastor claimed it was the happiest place on earth. He said, it's not Disneyland, it's Melody Land. And I think that was a slogan to get people to come to church. But of course, you know, all these, and I didn't understand this at the time, but all the big wig televangelists would book whatever you call it, sessions there. It's like Benny Hinn and Oral
really?
Roberts and all these people I've seen on TV. They were all there. I've seen them. You can't get near them, you know, because they have security. And what I saw was a sideshow. And I couldn't figure out, how does this line up with true Christianity? And so I saw a lot of that, and it just was unsettling to me. I believed in God. I didn't have a commitment, but I knew who God was. But like I said, and I have to keep reemphasizing, I did not have a commitment to Christ. But if someone said, do you know Jesus? I'd say, yes, I know who he is, but I didn't know him.
Yeah, you could like know of someone and not.
Yes, and I thought I was a Christian. I thought I was saved at the time, but I wasn't, because I was I was in church at a charismatic church on Sunday. But if you asked me, every Saturday night before, I was in a nightclub, drinking with my buddies and carrying on and, living that lifestyle. So the two don't mix. Light and darkness cannot dwell in the same room. And that was evident that I wasn't saved. I wasn't a Christian. And of course, the charismatic church, they don't focus on the relationship so much. It's just health and wealth. And if you give us money, you will get your blessing. And the more you give, the more God will do for you. And the stuff just never sat right with me. But I still went because I didn't know any different. And then I came to and this is going to kind of be a big turn in what we're talking about, but in 1995, about October, I started coming to the end of myself because I was living as a sinner, drinking and partying and doing all this stuff. My ex-wife and I did not get along. I was married to her for 10 years. It was a war for 10 years. We literally hated each other. And if I said anything otherwise, I'd be lying. We hated each other.
Did you have kids with her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I have 3 kids with her, and the whole marriage was just fighting, and it was seeing who could outdo each other, and we never should have gotten married, just because we slept with each other out of sin, and I think her mom, she was rebelling from her family because her mother married her stepdad, and so she wanted to get at her mother. She later in life admitted to me that the reason she pursued me was because her mother said, stay away from the Marines. They're out for one thing. And apparently I was that person. So.
The unlucky guy.
Yeah, and but like I said, I was a sinner too. So the sin I committed, I think, with the Lord back then is I was stationed in Virginia right before I met her, because I just went from Virginia to California, and I said, Lord, I want a wife. But I don't think I was asking God. I was telling God, I'm going to take a wife. So first person gave me any inkling of wanting a relationship was my ex. I pursued her. And there was no compatibility, between either one of us. So for 10 years, I was in that relationship, and 10 years, or actually almost 11 in California, I was sitting in rush hour traffic and had just had enough of California, because I was living a third of my life on the interstate.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I had a stick shift in rush hour traffic. I was just shifting for hours and hours. And so I went back and I said to her, I said, I want to move back to Iowa. And she went through the ceiling. And I gave her an ultimatum. I said, you can stay. I'm not going to make you come back, but I'm moving back. What I didn't acknowledge in its fullness with her was, I'm an empty soul. I'm coming to the end of myself. I know there's something other than the way things are now. I'm lonely inside. I'm falling apart. And I know God's out there, but I don't know how to reach him.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a last minute effort for me to find God, to move to Cedar Rapids. So we did. And she came to me a couple days later and said, I'll come, but under 2 conditions. And I said, what are they? She said, you will have a job immediately. And the second thing, she said, you'll have a place to live within a week. That was impossible for me. I could find a job, but when we arrived in Cedar Rapids, I had $50 to my name. My brother had money. He got an apartment and all that. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. So I humbled myself, and I wanted to come to Cedar Rapids and find a church. I actually was wanting to find a church because I wanted to repent of my sins, but I was keeping it a little bit bottled up. I wasn't admitting to her because I thought she would attack me for saying it. But I wanted to get to know who God really is, because I was starting to figure out then that the charismatic church is not Jesus. They are a very bad misrepresentation of who Jesus is. And so we were sitting in the living room, and my wife at the time was going through the phone book. She goes, here's a church you should go to, New Life, because you said you want a new life. So
That's so funny.
I thought, well, maybe we will. We'll try. So let's go. And so we ended up coming to New Life. This was October of 1995. And New Life was meeting in Hoover Elementary School's basement. And that's where I met your dad and Dwayne Lagerman for the first time.
That's so funny because you said you want a new life.
Yeah.
It's probably being sarcastic.
But I think she was being derogatory. Like,
Yeah.
you want a new life, so, but I took her up on it. So I went, and then I don't want to defamate her or speak ill of her, other than we just didn't get along. But at the time I started plugging into New Life, I immediately started to see the face of Christ through your father and Dwayne, because when they were reading scriptures, and there's only 2 life groups, and so I attended one, and I'm like, my gosh. And so I went back to the house. When you get home, I said, I'm starting to see who Jesus really is. What I did not say to her is, it's not from the churches you guys have been going to. I kept my mouth shut. But I started to draw near, and I was getting very excited, and I was starting to feel the presence of Christ. I think Satan came in, and because he knocks you off your feet right away. And I think my words sparked something, and all of a sudden we were fighting more than we ever had. And we had a knockdown drag out because I got promoted at work, and of course I was loving church, coming to church. And we had the end all of all end alls. We got into a fight that was just no coming back from. And that's where we split up. And so from there, of course, I was still a sinner, and still had no commitment to Christ other than I started committing to New Life Church. But I truly believe that Satan knocked me off my feet because I didn't have salvation at the time. I was drawing to Christ. So in sin, what I did is I left my ex-wife and stayed gone, and there's about a week or 2 in between. And Michelle is my wife, Michelle, for those who don't know, is still my sister's best friend. So I was at my mom's sitting, angry and upset because all the stuff that had happened, and Michelle comes walking in the front door. And she wasn't necessarily nice to me, but she just kind of looked at me, and I tried to make jokes, and she just kind of go away. So, but then she invited me to come over because my sister and her husband were going to play cards, so she invited me over. Mind you, this isn't good because one thing led to another, and I ended up, without details, I committed to a sinful relationship with Michelle because we weren't married, and we started sleeping together.
And you were still married to your ex-wife?
And I was still married to my ex-wife. And so, of course, that wasn't good, but I was very defensive. Everything that I touched fell apart. Couldn't get anything right. So I was in what I call survival mode. I got to this point where all I could do is just look after myself, and I wasn't doing a very good job at it. Because I was reduced. Scripture says a man who commits adultery loses everything he has. I was committing adultery, and I lost everything.
Yeah.
So, Bible doesn't come back void. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Yes.
And you were saying?
Well, yeah, I've seen that in my own life. Not that I've committed adultery and lost everything, but my dad has lost everything.
Yes, and so I was that sinner, and I knew I was wrong. I knew things were bad. I never had peace on the inside, even though I was with Michelle. I did develop feelings of love toward her because, and I wanted to be with her and I wanted to marry her. But where I was trapped in sin was I was still married to my ex. And she was all over the place in California. And, to keep that consolidated, because there's, like I said, I could talk about those circumstances for an hour, but just to keep it short, we didn't love each other. But I didn't know what to do. So, I got to the end of myself in like a 2-year time period of this. This went on for about 2 years. And in that stretch, the empty void that I had in California had reemerged, where I was empty in my soul. And what I never wanted to admit or tell people is how desperately lonely it is. I was absent from the presence of God based on what I was doing. And I was sinning in the worst way, to me, adultery, because I was showing Michelle that I will sleep with someone I'm not married to, and I was married to my ex, and I didn't even give her the decency or respect to cut her loose. So in that, I continued in that mess for about 2 years. And then I got to the point where I really just couldn't do it anymore. And but I didn't know where to turn or where to go. And so one day I was just headed over to my mom's, and I sat down. And now we all know the Lord works in mysterious ways. There was I want to call him some sort of, he did a ministry, so he might have been like a group lead or something, and his name was Brother Scott. I don't know his last name. Do you happen to know his? He's from a church called Marion Avenue Baptist in Washington, Iowa. They were doing a bus ministry coming up to Cedar Rapids and collecting kids to go to this ministry, and it was pretty successful because they were taking hundreds of kids from Cedar Rapids. And he comes to the house knocking on the door to see if there's any kids at my mom. So Michelle said, yeah, my son might be interested. So she sat down with Trey, and they got to talking. Well, long story short, she ended up accepting Christ right in my mother's living room from him witnessing and sharing the gospel with her. I was sitting on the edge of the couch just thinking to myself, God must not want me. Because I want what she just received. And I actually tried to chime in, and he was like, wait. And he just kept pushing me back and making me sit quiet. And then I got up, and Michelle, you could tell there's a transformation.
Yeah.
Immediately, she had this overwhelming relief. I was burdened with guilt and shame. And I'm like, God doesn't want me. I guess this is the end of my fate. And there was a large gathering called Convoy of Hope that was at McKinley School, which is just down the street from where my mom lived. And Michelle goes, let's go down there. And she's all excited, and I'm completely depressed. And so we went down, and I'm thinking to myself, well, it's a church event. Maybe I could just talk to somebody. So I said in my mind, anybody that will. Now, mind you, I forgot to add one of the most important details. I stopped going to New Life. So there was a 2-year stint where I wasn't, and I think it was more like 3 that I stopped going to church. But I wanted to come back. I wanted to be with the Lord. And I was thinking in my head, God, if you'll just take me, please hear me. And so we went down there, and I was sad and depressed while she was happy in all these events. And I was trying to talk to any pastor of any church. I'm like, I'll join your church if you'll just accept me into the flock. Couldn't get anyone's attention. And I thought, okay, this is supernatural. I am not, God does not want me. So we were getting ready to leave. We go to the very last tent. And River of Life Church had the biggest band, so they had the last tent, and they had a band. You had to go through their tent to get out of this thing. I sat there, and I had my hands crossed, and I had my head down, and Michelle's there, and I think her mom was there too. And I thought, well, I'm a lost soul forever. And I just looked to my left, and this guy comes flying out of nowhere slides across the seats, hits me, and almost knocks me out of the chair. It was Dwayne Lauderman.
Really?
And he hits me, and he grabs me right before I fall and hit the ground. He pulls me back up. He goes, Blade! And I looked at him, and I went, how are you doing? But I was so full of guilt and shame because here I am standing with my adulteress, which is Michelle. I'm still married to my ex. And he goes, how are you? He goes, we haven't seen you forever. He goes, where did you go? What happened? And I kind of went, I don't know I did this, but I just pointed to Michelle. I didn't even introduce her. I pointed at her.
This is what I've been doing for 3 years.
Yeah. He goes, it's okay. He just kind of pats me on my legs.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm Dwayne Lauderman. I'm the pastor of New Life. He goes, you are? She goes, I'm Michelle. She introduces her mom. And I have no words other than just guilt and shame. That's the only thing that would have come out of me. And he looks at me and he says something that gave me hope. He said, Blade, before he left, he goes, I'm going to let you go. He goes, but I want you to know something. He goes, we never left you. You left us. And I just, of course, the guilt and shame is just bellowing. And I said, what do I do to get back? He goes, just come home. He goes, come back to church. I said, I can come. He goes, it's okay. He goes, of course it's okay. He goes, see you Sunday? I said, yes. So I looked at Michelle, and I took that breath really. I wanted to cry. I don't cry, but I wanted to cry. And then I looked at her, and I now had that joy that she did. And I said, Michelle, I'm going to go by myself the first time, and I'm going to tell them the mess I'm in. I'm going to confess. And so we sat down with your dad and Dwayne, and that's a whole nother story, of course. But through their grace and love, they unwound all of the sin out of me and helped me to get back on my feet to accept Christ. So that was, 1999 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I said to the Lord, I said, if you'll take me, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. And I meant it. And God, Jesus allowed that. And that's why I'm here right now speaking to you guys.
Yeah, how many people do you think are just walking around just waiting for someone to talk to them?
Because I was more than we can even realize. And this is kind of a sad thing, but I think I know this. I can't prove it, but there are so many people that say this to me. They say, I'll go to church when I get my life together. And I tell the ones that say that to me, I say, you'll never have your life together enough, but that's not what Jesus wants. He wants the brokenness. If you get your life together, you won't need him. Come while you're broken. So I make it a point to say it to him. But in this world, I truly believe Satan has people so riddled with guilt that they won't even come near church.
No.
And that there are a lot more than you realize that want to, but they can't bring themselves to. See, I couldn't get myself where I needed to be. What it took was, and we know this in Scripture, God draws us. God showed me that you're not coming to me until I draw you. And so I know that as a fact. God opened the door so that I could walk in. But I had to be humble before he would open the door. And I wasn't humble for years. I was so full of pride and arrogance and me this, me that, and I'm a survivor and blah, blah, blah. But it was all garbage. It was in the moment when I just let go of everything and said, I am ashes and dust. Then Jesus said, now come with me.
Yeah, it's crazy. People, non-believers are riddled with shame and guilt, and then unfortunately a lot of Christians are riddled with fear. So we're not just talking to people like we should and inviting them to Christ because we're afraid of rejection or whatever it is.
Yes.
And maybe a lot of those non-believers are just waiting for a Christian to come.
Yes. And that's why I believe the Lord said, go and make disciples. And he gave us that commandment.
Yeah, because they're not going to come to you.
Yeah, and we all fall short of that. One of the things I've learned, though, is if you can live by example, we're the light of Christ. And to some, we're the only Jesus they'll see.
Yeah.
So what do we do with that? And, and because we fall short of the glory of God, even as Christians, and, I've been with Christ for a long time, I still fall short of that. Because every day, there's always an opportunity to share, but we fail to. And, I make excuses like, well, they were just being mean or they were grumpy that day, and I just decide to ignore them. But, we could all do a little more as far as evangelism. But then I know that God has grace, too, and I know that when God calls somebody, he's going to get them no matter what. Yeah. So there's grace, but those two things work hand in hand. Yes. But yeah, I know there's a lot of lost people. I've had the opportunity to share the gospel with some people that felt kind of and lived like I did. And it's amazing because, they and I did too. I felt like I've sinned too much. I felt like I committed the unforgivable sin. I'm like, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I did it. I did everything else, So, and I lived for years thinking I did, and it's the most horrible thing you could experience.
Yeah.
So, which is why on the flip side of the coin, Jesus is the best experience. And I have a lot of hobbies, and I love people. I'm a people person, but the most important thing in my life, 100%, is my relationship with Christ, because there's nothing like it, and there never will be anything else that can even compare to it.
That's an amen.
Well, that feels like a good place to stop.
Okay.
I don't know.
You got more questions?
I won't punish you guys anymore.
Well, I did want to ask, like, you unraveled your sin and you and Michelle got together. What was that like? Like, because you would have to blend your families.
Yes, and it's like putting two wrecked trains together on the track and making it roll. And the only way we could get it to move is we needed something supernatural, and that was Christ. Because, she had her share of problems and things that were really wrong in her life. I had mine. And miraculously, God blessed us both to where we could benefit each other in him to have a really good life together. So what that looks like is we kind of had nothing, neither one of us. Like I said, I came from I was on fire. People say you're in hell. I was like, the only thing left not to get submerged was my fingertip. I was burning in flames, and she had her share of sins and things that she did, and through the grace of Christ, we were forgiven by Jesus. And what had happened is we literally started building our lives together, which was it's kind of nice when I look back, and growing in Christ together. Because I know there's relationships where one person has walked with the Lord for a long time, and they'll meet a new person that's only been married a couple of years, and they decide to get married. But one of the things that's nice about Michelle and I is we grew in Christ together. We learned together. So we shared experiences. We had our share of downfalls and we've had fights. We're human just like anybody else. But the one thing that separates us from a lot of secular worldly relationships is it takes 3 people to be married. You marry your spouse, but the promise you make is bigger than just marrying that person. The biggest promise we made to each other is we promised God we would take care of each other. So we have Jesus in our relationship. We grew in Christ together. That's one of the, I think, things that we like, and we're still growing in Christ.
Yeah.
We'll continue to grow until we
Yeah.
die. Do you guys agree with that? That we're
Yes.
all okay? So I'm not just the guy sitting in the back of the class, and pretty slow at learning this. So, and we still make mistakes, but what Michelle and I have learned in our marriage is what God's grace looks like. And that it doesn't matter now how messed up we are. He loves us no matter what. I think that a lot of people in other churches fall short of knowing that. That's one of the things I love about being here at New Life. I strongly encourage anyone that comes to this church to do some research, deep-rooted, deep, heartfelt research, and understand that Jesus loves us unconditionally, and it is true. He does not leave us. And no, you will not lose your salvation, because it says in Scripture, he didn't lose anyone that God the Father gave him. That's us.
Yeah.
That is us.
Yes.
And I think more people should know that, and that's kind of a quest. So, at the end of this conversation, I'd say I can laugh and joke, and I love kids, hanging out, and I love hanging out with grown-ups and family members and cousins and aunts and uncles, and I love my church brothers and sisters. I love everybody. But the one thing I want people to know is how much grace Jesus has, because that's what gives me.
And you have so much grace as a person. You're such a gracious person, but it's probably because you've experienced so much grace from God.
I've had so much forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because, when I look at people that I've talked to even people at church, and they're like, yeah, when I was a kid, I took a cookie. And then I had to repent, and I accepted Christ. I'm like, I committed adultery. I didn't just take the cookie. I burned down the cookie store and killed everybody in it. That's what I would look like if it was stealing cookies, So, but because I've been forgiven much, God has given me that capability of loving much.
Yes, wow. It's an amazing story because you kind of look at, God took 2 really big messes, and now you guys have such a beautiful life. You have children, and you have grandchildren, and they're coming to church, and you're getting to love them, and you're running your business. Can you imagine back to when you were 14 and your dad had died, and the person that is introducing you to Jesus and is helping you build your relationship with Jesus? Can you imagine that now you're having a generation? You're starting a generation of children who are going to church. Your grandchildren go to church.
That is so amazing. Even me listening to you saying that is just blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I never in a million years would have even been able to picture that, because when you took me back to being 14 years old, I was a train wreck. There's no way I could have done any of that. And I don't accredit myself for accomplishments, because everything comes from Christ. All the gifts I've had comes from Christ. He created everything. He created our personalities. A lot of people don't realize that, and our character. That all attributes to the glory of God. And so we need to be thankful for that. And a spirit of thankfulness is the foundation of my relationship.
And the crazy thing is that Jesus knew that 14-year-old boy, and he knew you before that. He knew Blade, what Blade would become later on. And you weren't his son then, but you are his son now, and he knew that about you.
Yes, and what I tell people, that's interesting, because people always say, well, all the stuff, you could have got killed, you could have
died.
Or been put in jail, or this, that, and the other. And I tell people God sustained me because he saw something beyond anything I could see with my eyes. And it's, once again, it's the grace of God.
Yeah, and I like that you said whatever you touched, turned, went to crap. It was broken.
Just
but
fell
now
apart.
it just feels your family. You touch your family, but it's because the hand of Christ is there with you. It's not just your hand.
Yes.
There is Christ there with you and blessing you and sustaining your family.
Yes.
As you just try to be Christ in your life, in your relationships. And that's all you can really do.
You're 100% correct. Absolutely. And my walk with Jesus is like this. I love how you, say that. My walk with Jesus, if I had to explain it in an illustration, it's like this. You get in this car. This car is going to go forever. But to walk with Christ, you have to let go of the steering wheel and just ride. and let the Lord guide you. And that's what my life looks like.
And now a lot of people are doing that in Teslas.
Yes. Except those cars can go off a
Yeah,
cliff.
that's true. So Jesus does not.
Yeah.
Jesus does not let you crash.
Yes, even before the Teslas and all this
Yeah,
technology.
Jesus has been doing it.
Yes. I think Jesus has a better car than Tesla. He can make a better car. But yeah, it's true, but just letting go. And you've heard the people say, let go, let God. There's truth in it, but by letting go, trust him. The hardest thing for us, even as Christians, is to trust God 100%. And I've talked to other Christians, even here at church. I'm like, how much do you trust God? About 60%.
Depends on what the thing is.
It depends. Yes. More in some areas and less in others. Yeah. And we're all guilty of that. And do we wake up every day and trust God 100%? So we have a lot of growing to do.
Yes. Wow, Jesus is so amazing. Everybody, in the world, people are usually looking for diamonds and gold, but Jesus is the one crazy guy out there, probably looks homeless, and he's looking for just rocks and dirt and trash, and then he's turning them into gold and he's turning them into diamonds.
That's
under
true.
Extreme pressure sometimes. Like for you,
Yeah.
he is searching for those people that don't have talents and
he
just
is,
don't have much to them.
Yes, and like you say, he's the diamonds and stuff. Yeah, because eternal life, and because it says, Scripture says, a man that loses his life finds the true meaning of life in Christ. And a man that tries to hang on to his life loses it. So you gotta let go of the pride and let go of yourself. You gotta die to something, and the best thing to die to is Christ.
Yes.
Because if you die to him, now you found the true meaning of Christ.
Yes.
So,
Amen.
We don't have to stop talking. If you guys want to keep talking.
Well, I'm fine with stopping.
Okay.
Joe always wants to stop and I always want to keep chatting. We'll have to have you back, Blade, because I know there's more.
Oh, there's a lot more.
There's
That's
a
just
lot
the
more.
tip of the iceberg.
We'll have Blade Part 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you again, Blade.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This
I
is really
appreciate
great.
this.
Glad you could make it here.
Yeah.
Sorry to drag you out of work, too. Oh, my goodness. And then on top of it, be late.
Yeah.
Not even you, me. It's always the black people.
Yeah. You know how it is. Yeah. We call it CPT, colored people time. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate you guys inviting me. This was fun.
Well, I thought you would be very good on the podcast. Yeah, interesting stories, and you really carried this thing too.
Oh, I thought
Well,
that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, but I felt like we didn't have to ask very many questions. Like your storytelling is very good. You should write this stuff down, so
It'd be hard. It'd take a lot of writing.
Oh, I'm sure.
Typing away.
You could just do video essays, or
Yeah.
just, I don't know,
I'd have to.
talking to your phone.
Yeah, that'd be take a while, but God has blessed me with a lot of experiences in life. That's one thing too, and I try to live it to the fullest.
Well, and to be able to remember it all, that's also.
Yeah, that's hard. But He blessed me with the capability.
Yeah, literally remembering from 8 months old to now.
So yeah, but it's definitely a journey, and I'm 58 years old for anyone that wonders.
Wow,
that.
you're young.
Yeah, I don't always feel that way.
Especially when you hit the ground.
Yeah, when you bounce and roll, you feel every inch of that every year.
Hearing you say that makes Kurt feel old now. Is he like 61?
My dad?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's somewhere close. We're close.
He's like
to
60 or
him.
61.
Couple of years older than me. Yeah. So, but when you one thing I will say too along these same lines. So when you walk with Christ, is what? Are we still rolling? Because
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
so
you can keep
there's
going.
one more thing I'd like to say. I've talked to a few people along the way recently that believe that if you accept Christ and you go to church, your life instantly becomes boring.
Boring.
So boring. And I've told them, I said, it is 100% the opposite. It is completely the opposite. Your life becomes more exciting than it ever has. I want to attest to that. Yeah, one of the reasons I have so many experiences now is because walking with Christ. God, one thing in Scripture that I really love about Jesus, God always says, He tells you, gives you instruction, He says, now go. He always sends us on a journey. And even Christ, He was always in one place or another. And anyone that walked with Him, you didn't stay in the same place. You were all over the place from one town to another. And as a Christian, we are experiencing that. Michelle and I are experiencing that in our lives, that we go places and we see things and we do things. So for those that might think that having a relationship with Jesus is boring, it is anything but.
Well, you're getting into the mess of the world because now you no longer are of the world.
That is correct.
But you're still here, and so the mess gets on you, and the people, and loving the people, and pulling them out, and showing them the Christ. I can't imagine that would be too boring.
And it's not, and I've talked to friends, and they think because they have to change their lifestyle, because people equate sin as being fun, and being a Christian as not being fun. To make it as simple as possible. But what they don't realize it is the opposite, because sin leads to death. Death means you're going to lose something. You may not physically die, but something is going to die when you sin.
Well, and you're a slave to your sin. That's the thing. You think you're having fun, but you're actually in a prison cell, and you have to do the things that you're doing. You have to keep sinning, basically, when you don't have the Holy Spirit. That does not sound fun to me. And the unfortunate thing that Christians can fall into, Josh was recently reading me the verse, and I forget what it is that Paul is reminding us that we're no longer slaves to sin. If you feel like you're in a cell, you feel like you're locked in, it's locked from the inside. You lock the door. You can
just walk over and lock it. Walk out.
Just walk out. You can leave. But non-believers do not have that option.
Yes.
We have the freedom to sin and to not sin, but non-believers do not have that option.
Yes, they're locked in the cell.
Yes, and it's locked from the outside, and only Jesus can unlock that door.
Yes. One of my brothers told me this. It was interesting. He said, "Do you know what the reward for sin is?" And I said, "Death." He goes, "Yes." He goes, "But more specifically, if you don't physically die." He said, "If you submit to anything that's sinful," he said, "the reward for sin is nothing." I said, "Do you want to elaborate on that?" He said, "What do you get anytime you commit a sin? Ultimately, you end up with nothing." He said, "Nothing." And he kept re-emphasizing that. He said, yes, there's a death of something, but a lot of times in the physical world, it results in nothing. If you sin with your car and you get pulled over for drunk driving, you end up losing your license. Now you have nothing to put in your wallet. And he gave me examples like that. Or you lose your car. Now you have nothing. You have to walk. He said, but nothing is a physical result of sin. But see, with Christ, we have eternal life. We have rewards in heaven. So everything's being stored up and banked up. We have everything with Christ. But anytime there's a submission into anything that's satanic or sinful, the end result and the end reward is nothing.
Well, and the crazy thing is that with the way the Lord has set up the world, Christ forgives you from sins and he redeems things. But some of that still follows you, consequences. You still struggle with the mistakes you made.
Yes.
You're forgiven, you don't have the shame anymore, but if you had a child before you were married, now blending a family is really difficult.
Yes.
And that is not how the Lord had intended things to be, but now you still have the struggles of that. And the Lord can make beauty out of it, but your sin is very serious.
Yes. Oh, well, that's kind of how our family is, yeah, because I think once I accepted Christ genuinely and started having a relationship with Jesus, I think my consequences followed me for about 5 years, maybe even more. And it's kind of like a thorn in your flesh, like Paul's oh my gosh, this keeps reoccurring, these consequences. And, that's one of the things I had to endure. But then I had to remember Jesus' grace is good enough, even with following these consequences. Yeah, because we have kids. I have kids with 2 different women. My wife has a child out of wedlock with her ex, which he passed away, but there's some grace in that too.
Yes.
But we have those consequences, and kids from mixed families don't always get along when you got a dad from this side and the mom, and so there's so many things that we had to struggle through. Whereas if they were all born with the same mom and dad, it wouldn't have been so bad. But the siblings fight, it goes all the way back to Isaac and Ishmael.
Yes, it does.
So the things we should have learned but never did.
Well, and that's why you have to die, and that's why you cannot eat the fruit of life and live forever, because then it'll just be crap.
Yeah.
Forever. You have to die, and you have to leave it here so that you can go to heaven, where those consequences, even though you're forgiven and redeemed, they're not following you anymore.
Yes. There'll always be something here.
Yes, there will.
In this fallen world, which is a battlefield.
Yeah.
It's a war zone.
Christ, to die is gain.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, that's a great spot to stop.
For the 3rd time.
Thanks
I'll
everybody for
stop
listening.
talking, I promise.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, this is awesome.
You guys didn't tell me it'd be fun.
Then you were okay when you showed up the first time.